Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon, colleagues. I know we've had a long morning into afternoon talking about our first bill of the day. I want to first start off by saying that you know that I have a long history of working across the aisle, and I do not oppose Republican policies as a knee-jerk reaction ever, and yet I am standing here today to oppose this bill. You may also notice that I am wearing a bit of green today, and that was intentional because I knew we'd be talking about money, taxpayer dollars, and when we're talking about taxpayer dollars, fast talk isn't what we need. We need to slow down because it isn't monopoly money, it is real money, and it belongs to Georgians, and we are entrusted to use it wisely. So I rise today not simply to oppose a bill, but to defend something simple, and that is that good public policy should be guided by math. Because this bill does not just raise the standard deduction, it is also paired with talk of eventually eliminating the income tax altogether. It also eliminates, in a single bill, the very tax credits that have continued to shape Georgia's economic competitiveness for decades and help to make us the #1 state for business. Perhaps you've heard that before. It is our golden talking point. Now, I understand the appeal of simplicity. Raising the standard deduction sounds clean, it sounds fair, and it does sound like relief, and relief matters. But relief that isn't sustainable isn't relief. It is a delayed invoice on Georgia families. And eliminating every major tax credit without a replacement framework is not reform. These are structural changes that make Georgia weaker, and they are being labeled as an affordability plan. So this is not a debate about whether we want affordability or not. We all do. Every single one of us hears from families who are struggling all across the state, and there's no doubt that we all feel it in our own homes, as the senator from the 13th said earlier. Groceries cost more, rent costs more, child care costs more, insurance costs more, health care costs more, and paychecks are not stretching the way they used to. So yes, affordability matters. But here's the problem with the bill. That affordability framing ignores a basic truth of state budgeting. Good public policy requires math, not messaging, not momentum, and certainly not magical thinking. And this bill ignores the math. In fact, in committee, there was no fiscal analysis submitted, no answer to the question, what does the tax burden look like in other states who've done this versus where Georgia is today? No piece of paper that showed the most used tax credits in the state and their value. No opportunity for public testimony, just a lot of trust me. Even today, we've heard that word trust a lot. Let me start by acknowledging that raising the standard deduction sounds good, and of course it would appeal to everyday Georgians. Who doesn't want their taxes lowered? For many families, any relief matters because costs are high and budgets are tight. There's not a single person in this room indifferent to that. But that relief must be carefully planned and intentional to reduce the burdens that all Georgians face, not just a few. And that's where this conversation takes a turn. The math is simple. If we collect less, we have less. That reduction in revenue does not change the fact that Georgia has constitutional obligations to keep a balanced budget. We must pay teachers and keep classrooms open. We must maintain roads and bridges. We must fund public safety, public health, and mental health services. We must respond to disasters, support seniors, and keep communities functioning. Those responsibilities do not vanish because we lower the income tax rate. And looking at the fact that we rank 45th in healthcare and 39th in education, one could argue that we aren't hitting the marks and need to invest more in those things today. And you know what? As much as people want their costs to go down, they also want good schools, safe communities, and reliable infrastructure. We were told that the increase in the standard deduction amounts to about $6 billion in lost revenue with $3 billion in tax cuts. That number has fluctuated. Again, we've had nothing put in front of us to really evaluate. But let's go with the $9 billion. As someone who knows how a business operates, let's think about how fast that money, how fast a $9 billion hole consumes core services that keep rural communities and statewide commerce working. $9 billion in the budget that we are looking at right now equals real line items. It's roughly the budget of the Department of Community Health, which in the amended budget is $5.65 billion. That's Medicaid, that's Peach Care, that's provider payments, that's health care for low-income families, seniors, and children across Georgia. Plus, the Board of Regents and the University System of Georgia's budget at $4.03 billion that funds every public college and university in this state. Together, that's about $9.68 billion, well over the lowballed estimate of how much these cuts would remove from our state revenue. So in plain terms, a $9 billion hole is the budget equivalent of gutting health care for our most vulnerable and wiping out funding for Georgia's public universities. Or we could look at it another way. The Georgia Department of Transportation's budget is $5.12 billion. That includes money for the local road assistance program, money for the rural bridge replacement, and money for SR 316 interchange conversions. Add to that the State Road and Tollway Authority's I-75 Express Lanes project in Clayton and Henry counties, a $1.796 billion needed investment in the region. And then add the Department of Agriculture, a piece of that, because that's $75 million, which supports food safety, consumer protection, and agricultural programs that keep our rural economy running. $9 billion is not spare change. It is roads and bridges, it is rural access, it is commerce moving across our state. It is hospitals staying open, it is universities educating the next generation, and so much more. This bill creates a hole in the budget that would eat through our entire reserves long before you even get to 2031 when the tax credits expire, and we hope business is still here to pay us in full. When you cut a major dependable revenue source like the income tax, we do not have to guess how this ends. Other states already ran the experiment. Sales taxes went up, property taxes increased, funding for services were cut, or they relied on one-time reserves and optimistic projections, hoping the next recession does not arrive. This isn't a theory, this is arithmetic. And it's exactly what has happened in other states. Take Louisiana, for example. After major income and corporate tax cuts, lawmakers had to raise the statewide sales tax to fill the gap. The most famous cautionary tale is Kansas, where sweeping tax cuts created deep budget stress and painful consequences for public services. It's an example that analysts still warn other states not to repeat. Georgia should learn from those lessons, not repeat them. Revenue reductions do not vanish obligations. They shift costs. And when revenue shifts, so does the burden. Sales taxes fall harder on families who spend most of what they earn. Property tax pressure shows up in rent and housing costs. So while some may see a smaller income tax line on paper, it won't feel cheaper at home. The bill goes down here, but you better believe it goes up somewhere else. Big permanent income tax cuts don't lower the price of milk or diapers. They don't make rent cheaper. They don't pay for your child care. They mostly benefit those at the very top while leaving everyday Georgians even more exposed to rising local taxes and reduced services. And none of those outcomes equal affordability. Relief that creates a hole today becomes pressure tomorrow, and pressure, it always lands somewhere, usually on the people who make the least. Now let's talk a little bit about the elimination of the tax credits. We like to say we're the #1 state to do business, but can we admit that Georgia did not just stumble into economic success? Georgia did not grow by accident. We didn't wake up one morning and discover that manufacturing, research, logistics, clean energy, innovators and entrepreneurs had just decided to come here out of kindness or because our people look good. We competed. We built a strategy. Am I done? We created targeted tax credits, not as favors, but as tools to compete against other states, to attract investment, to drive job creation so Georgians can go to work. Those credits were strategic, and they brought production to smaller and big cities, supported research and development, helped rural communities attract industry, and encouraged redevelopment in the neighborhoods that needed them most. And make no mistake, they're signals to industry, investors, families. When we say Georgia offers this incentive, we are saying we want your business, we want your jobs, we want your innovation. So what message do we send them when we eliminate them? Other states are already sharpening their incentives. States like Texas and North Carolina are eagerly awaiting passage of this bill more than anyone else. Today, we are being asked to erase that plan in one vote. And actually, let me just say that in a different way. The majority caucus has been in charge for well over 20 years, and all of a sudden now these credits are corporate welfare and have been bad for Georgia. These are your tax credits as much as they are ours. You better stand by them or don't take credit for the success they've generated. You really want to run away from credits that have brought us jobs and millions and billions of dollars in investment in our cities and counties? I'm going to fast forward because I don't know if I'm actually. So Georgia did not become competitive overnight. You can't, I'm going to close it up.
Okay.
You can't remove every tool at once without putting the state at risk. If reform is needed, let's reform precisely. Let's evaluate rigorously. And I'm not defending every tax credit. We do need them. The Democratic caucus would love to work with you on a plan toward affordability. There are many other things that we can do. The math deserves better. Relief should be real, reform should be strategic, and taxpayer dollars deserve our discipline. This vote may pass, but history will record whether we exercise foresight or impatience. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll yield for questions if there are any.
No questions, Senator.
Thank you.